Welcome back to the Absolute Reason podcast. I am Joan, your freaky philosopher, and this is where we further discover and explore the potent power that is spiritual intelligence, or what I refer to as the art of sacred physics. Hang tight and thanks for joining me again today, because today we will learn how to spot a pervert. So let's hit it. As usual, before we get started on the teachings, let me first reference the books and the ancient knowledge that I used to compile this lesson for you today. First of all, and as the last episode, I am using Advice to Householders. This is that special 40-page book that I discovered on a mountaintop in Sri Lanka. I will also obviously make use of the Chandogya Upanishad, and as a bonus, I am bringing in some Rudolf Steiner teachings to help guide us along so that we can learn how to spot a pervert. So it was in the previous episode where we discovered and explored the 4 categories of duties bestowed on you as a human being. These categories were duty to self, duty to your domestic life, duty to your social environment, your community, and then duty to your chosen competitive profession. But the way I taught that concept of duties was done in a way where I didn't explore what happens when our duties become perverted. And that is what we will be looking at today. In a perfect world, everybody performs their duties as prescribed and bestowed upon us. But we all know we don't live in a perfect world, and very often we have perverted ideas of what truth is. And I say us because as much as we are going to learn how to spot a pervert today, I want you to please always keep it with you that your observation must begin with yourself. So in practicing how to spot a pervert, begin to practice how to spot your own perversions. What is it about your perspective that's maybe not completely aligned with reality, considering the new knowledge now gained around your sense of duty as a human being? Spot your own perversions first, work on them, work through them, and then you begin to look outward. This is incredibly helpful as a guideline so that you yourself don't become one of those people. Oh, only the righteous are right. Nay, I'm not a pervert and I can spot a pervert. That's not the purpose of this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to show you how anything in life can be perverted and how important it is to continuously check yourself to make sure that your own sense of reality and your relationship to this reality is not perverted. It's a maintenance game, basically. So in the previous podcast, you saw this quick picture that I showed when I referred to the threefold nature of the individual, also known as your fixed center core, I used an image that looked like a scale, and you could see the guy's face and his legs there at the bottom. This is what I call the scale of man. It is an image that will show you the duality of life and how these dualities can be perverted. It is the contrast, the polarities of duality that we will be exploring today. And the goal is to observe that anything can be perverted, and then to learn how to harmonize things within your stable center core with a fixed eye on morality. So before I further go into the scale of man, let's first go and explore and discover the baseline, the conditioning of us as children, and how do we make sure that we form a proper and a healthy baseline of conditioning for our children, so that when they grow up, they are already aligned with practices of morality. Advice to the householders goes into detail explaining the 3 different stages of a child and how we can implement spirituality into their lives so that it forms part of their conditioning. It will always be part of who they are. It categorizes 3 stages in a child's life. It is the day of birth up until the age of 3. Then we discover from the age of 3 to 5, and then from 8 to 10. It is in the age of 0 to 3 where our children are like sponges. They absorb everything they observe. And this is how we teach our children morality in that span, 0 to 3. Lead and teach your children through example. If you want to teach your child how to live a moral life from day 1, show them how to live a moral life from day 1. They will observe you, absorb it, and naturally apply those values. It is in the ages 3 to 5 where we begin to implement things like prayer before our meals. Oh, this is so important, and I can go on about prayer before eating probably for an hour. So I'm going to try and hold back and not do it and not go off on a tangent. But what you need to know is that when we pray before we eat, there is a short, a brief, but serious moment where we observe the food on our plate. We show gratitude for the food we are about to consume. Gratitude to the extent of being grateful for the sacrifice made by both plants and animals in order for us to consume it and grow as people. It is in that moment, that serious, brief moment before I eat, where I not only show gratitude to the food I'm about to consume, but I also direct my body on how to consume the food. So I show gratitude, and then I tell my body, please consume and absorb and convert the energies to fit me and my purpose. It must be fit for purpose, the food I consume and how it's converted into energy. That way, I guide the food and the consumption of my food to be aligned with my morality, fit for purpose. I am a teacher. Apply it in the consumption of my food. It sounds a bit weird, but I promise you, as an individual who used to weigh 92 kgs at the highest and the fattest I was, I am now strong, fit and fiddle. You can see I don't even know how much I weigh now. I think it's in the 60s somewhere. But I am clearly a healthy, fit individual, more than I was when I was doing professional sport. And this I account to the fact that I have this brief but serious moment before I consume my food. Try it. I promise you, you will feel better as an individual. Have your children observe you as you do this prayer before you eat. If you don't want to pray before you eat, just place the intention of gratitude and then the conversion of that energy to fit me for my purpose. That's what you need. It's all about the intention and the direction. Your child at the age of 5 will observe this, and it will automatically form part of their baseline. The next thing at the age of 3 to 5, the direction and the instruction given is that we must introduce stories of Christ, Krishna, Rama, Buddha, Muhammad, and Moses. You can see how there's a broad spectrum of religious applications and spiritual giants that they are referring to. That is because Sanatana Dharma isn't a religion as such, but it expresses the eternal values of life. So you can overlay everything I teach onto your choice of religion or spiritual practice, and bet your bottom it will have an illuminating effect. And this is why it says introduce stories of Christ, Krishna, Rama, Buddha, Muhammad, and Moses. If you want, do all of them, even better, to learn from all of these spiritual leaders and not just isolate one. Recount the experiences, their trials, and inner strength in overcoming temptations, as well as the positive experiences of joy. I can relate to this when I think about my childhood. Obviously, my mother always read us the Bible stories. So Moses, but most of all, it was Samson. I loved Samson. Samson and obviously King Solomon. Those were my two favorite characters. And when I perform my everyday duties, in the times where I need to feel courageous, I have flashes of Samson. In the times where I need to feel wise and not just act but think, then I reach for King Solomon. You see, it's in my baseline. It's always there, and it's always reflecting in my sense of discrimination, how I choose to act. So this is at the ages of 3 to 5. I would say maybe even then to ages 3 to 8. Because it is the last developmental stage of a child that really kicks in between the ages of 8 and 10. This is where the advice is given that at a fixed time for 30 minutes daily, sit down with your children and read for them from the Gospels or other spiritual texts. This discipline leads their minds on an independent journey. Let me try that again. This discipline leads their minds on an independent journey. So let them venture off with, what do you think was going through Samson's mind when they tied him up between the pillars and he felt helpless and without strength? What went through his mind to make him dig deep, gather the internal spiritual strength hidden deep within him in order to break those pillars that were binding him? Let them venture out into that idea and let them explore what their spirituality would have allowed them to consider as children. Does that make sense? In other words, poke and probe your child. What would you have done if you were Samson? What do you think David and Goliath, those two forces, what do you think was happening in the guy's mind and heart? Was he scared, but yet he still acted? Did he feel intimidated? Yes, and yet he still conquered. What is it within the individual that allows for that strength to stir and manifest? Poke and probe your child. This is how we nurture and condition spiritual values. Excellent. Now we have gained knowledge around our childhood and how we develop as moral human beings, and in we go into the life as an adult. We need a new image to now explain what it means to live in a world of duality and what exactly I mean when I speak about the scale of man. So let us begin with the term of, and you've all heard this, we live in a world of duality. But what does it mean? Well, the Chandogya Upanishad teaches that first was energy, then matter. So although energy and matter are counterparts, it is the force of energy that pulls stronger than the force of matter. This is why your intent as an individual is so potent, because it is the energy that pushes behind your action within the world of matter. But these scales of energy and matter is not to be in equilibrium. They push and pull between each other as a constant as we live and experience life. But it is like an airplane, right? We are now stabilizing in the air between our energy aspect and our matter aspect. But we know anything and everything in life can be perverted. So you can pervert energy, you can pervert matter, and if you do this, you're going to crash. And this is what we want to prevent. So how do we do this? How do we begin to spot ourselves and our own actions as being a little bit perverted, and then we can take that force, redirect it, and live once again in a more harmonious relationship in the world of duality, more harmonious with the energy aspect of who I am, and then the world of matter, my physical expression. How do we find the balance, and how do we spot a pervert? Hang tight, we're going to go into that now. Okay, so now we have gained additional information on what it means to live in a world of duality, energy and matter. But we've learned, and keep this in mind always, first was energy, then matter. So there's a push-pull, but energy pulls stronger. What does it mean in a spiritual context? Well, energy and matter can then be translated into conception and perception. This is why intent is so important. It forms part of the conception of your desire. And then perception is when it moves into the world of matter and it becomes something observable. But let's take it a step further. Energy is then overlaid as morality, intention, right? The values that stirs the desires we pursue. But matter is then passion. So we have energy and matter, conception, perception, and then we have morality and passion. Okay, so we're going to look at morality and passion as our key indicators to spot a pervert. Doesn't this sound interesting? I just found this so interesting. Okay, so let's go look at morality as our first stopping point. How do I spot if my morality is being misguided and being perverted? I will use my podcast and the entire development of absolute reason as an example of how this functions, the scale of man. What fixed relativities did I place onto the concept of absolute reason in order to make sure I don't get perverted as a spiritual teacher in the world of perception? Okay, We all know spiritual teachers get misguided, and then they go into this whole, oh, only the righteous are right, and I am the boss, and fall down and kiss my feet. You won't find that with me. But how is it that I made sure, at least through the structure of absolute reason, to make sure I keep myself aligned with morality? How did I do this? Well, if you go look at my slogan, liberation for one, liberation for all, that is one of my key fixed relativities to make sure I personally don't get perverted as a teacher. It is always about my liberation. Yes, I want to be liberated. Spiritually, I want to be liberated. But it was in the conception of absolute reason where I realized my liberation means absolutely nothing without the liberation of all. Now, I can't go and liberate everybody, but as a teacher, what I can do and what is my duty is to supply you with a baseline from which you can then liberate yourself. This is why I say, keep stillness as your only prophet. I am making sure my morality doesn't get perverted, where I all of a sudden one morning wake up and decide, I am your prophet and you should listen to me. Liberation for one, liberation for all is a fixed relativity to make sure I understand your liberation is as important as my own, and where I know I learn from you as much as you learn from me. So let's go look at the world of passion. I am a very passionate person. I'm also not one of those spiritual teachers who teach you that desire is this boogeyman inside of you and you should just ban every single desire you have. Hell no, this is not how duality works. It is never the rejection of something, but it is about harmonizing the duality aspects of this creation. So although I am an incredibly passionate person, I keep my desires aligned with morality so that I can make sure my desire for success, popularity, for financial gain, that it doesn't run away with me. Because I have placed liberation for one, liberation for all as my governing relativity, to make sure that my desire for money doesn't overtake my desire to supply you with a baseline from which you can liberate yourself. Does that make a little bit sense? Do you want to see something where it does get perverted? Where it gets perverted. Let's use duty as our guideline. It is in the Bhagavad Gita where they teach us to perform another's duty is fraught with danger. Why is that? Let's go look. Yes, I'm a true crime freak. You all know I like my true crime stories. And there's this particular one, it's called Fatal Vows. And what they say is what? Love is bliss. No, wait. Love is blind. Marriage bliss. But divorce is murder. I find that so funny. But that's exactly the example I'm going to use to show you how one can get perverted when one begins to think another's duty and take that other duty, another person's duty, and make it your own. This happens in this true crime series all the time. There are people out there who are married and then somebody goes and has a extramarital affair. The person stepping into that marriage as a third party is an individual who is now being misguided by taking on another person's duty. You are not the husband. Don't step into a marriage as if you are. Your morality is being perverted. in the way where you now begin to perform another man's duty. It's fraught with danger. You are going to hurt yourself and those around you. What you want to remember when you find yourself at this crossroad is that it is not my duty to step into a marriage that is not my own. This begins to help you guide your own morality as an individual, and it keeps you safe from these dodgy situations. Another way, and I've explained this, where you perform another duty and where your own morality, your own value system gets perverted, is if you now begin to perform another person's job, duty, description within your chosen profession. If you are a salesperson, you are a salesperson. If you are a factory manager, you are a factory manager. Don't try to do another guy's job. It's a bugger up. Things are going to break, or business is going to break. So keep in mind that your duties are fixed relativities to help you not get perverted in the world of duality. By the way, this is why scripture is also important. Just by reading scripture and keeping your spiritual sense aligned and maintained through general and continuous practices, that has an effect on you as an individual. So naturally, these spiritual forces will stir within you where you don't even begin to think about performing another person's duty. It naturally keeps you aligned. The same way your body becomes warm and fuzzy when you dip your feet in warm water. It has an effect on the entire being, even though only your feet are submerged. This is why it's important to consistently keep your spiritual practices going. It helps you maintain harmony as you fly through creation in the world of duality. I can go further. You want me to go further? Let's go a little bit further and see what happens. So, another key indicator for you to be able to spot a pervert, and this is key indicator. So now I'm observing somebody else. Let's say somebody on mainstream news. They are telling me to do something. I'm suspicious. How do I gauge if what this person is telling me is aligned with morality, or is it being perverted? Aha! Basic. What you do is you go look at the individual. To see if morality is being perverted, you ask one question. Does this individual lack interest in others? If you see this individual lacks interest in others, it's a key indicator something is being perverted in the moral aspect of duality. And the way we observe how things are being perverted in the world of passions, you can gauge that through the perversions of weakness. In other words, you will see an individual who takes advantage of the weaknesses of those around them. So how do we spot perverted morality? We answer the question of, does this individual lack interest in others? And in the world of passions, how we spot perversions is we go and see if if this individual is taking advantage of others' weaknesses. Are you dominating them? Are you forcing them through fear to do what you want them to do? Force and control is the critical one there. So, let's see, I'm watching this guy and he's telling me to do something on mainstream news. I feel suspicious and a little bit uncomfortable. The first question I will ask is, how open is this individual giving me an instruction, right? How open is this individual to discuss this instruction with those who are different to him. So do you lack interest in others, or do you embrace others? Oh, I'm giving you an instruction, you don't believe me and you're suspicious of me? Come, let's talk. Let's have a free speech environment where we can discuss this matter. If I am a perverted individual, I am going to dismiss those with different opinions to mine. This is where it comes in. I lack interest in others. Then I go into the passions. What is this person? All right, so this individual is willing to discuss this matter with other people in a free conversation platform. But it is during that conversation where this individual does nothing but force and control through acts of violence, be it words or actions, force and control over those who are weaker than them. Then I can now also begin to spot, well, if you are forcing and controlling those weaker than you, well, then I can gauge you as a bit of a pervert. But are you truly showing an interest in those weaker than you? Well, then I begin to see that you are at least making an effort to harmonize the dualities of who you are. You see how you can spot a pervert? Are there selfish desires, and is there force and control? These two are key indicators. Use them and use the scale of man, where you can see the different push and pull forces within you as an individual. Begin to observe it, practice it, play with it, harmonize yourself, and then you gooi is Afrikaans for, then you throw that new developed skill of observation out into the world. Go and look at mainstream media, who is saying what, overlay the scale of man, and see if you can gauge if what this guy is saying is a perversion of morality, or is it aligned with morality. I always say this when I observe an individual. Show me how you treat those lesser than you, and I will show you the man. I hope this has been helpful so that you can understand, although we all perform our duties, it's not always done in a harmonious and in a moral way. And there is a key skill for us as humanity to develop: how to spot a pervert. You don't need these institutions to go and do a data analysis, a risk assessment, a method statement, all of these Excel spreadsheets with data points to tell you this instruction is perverted or not. Apply the spiritual intelligence of the scale of man, and bet your bottom insight will come, and you'll be able to spot a pervert without the help of a third-party institution. I hope this helps you. I am Joan, your freaky philosopher. You are and forever will be my absolute reason.